Okay, so I want to talk about how to get set up. We have a few things we're going to try to do this, or get comfortable with this week. We are going to learn how to set up the paper sink. We're going to learn how to make photograms. We're going to learn how to make contact sheets. We're going to learn how to make prints, and then we're going to learn how to break everything down and make sure that it's in better shape than it is right now. So to start, I'm going to start with just getting the chemistry set up. So in the paper sink, we actually have a number of trays. They're not as clean as they should be. But you can see here, hopefully, I'll come a little closer, they actually say what the trays are. So these are the fixer trays. We have several positions. You'll be able to tell the positions basically by the chemistry and then also by memory. The deck tall, the developer, is right here. That's always our first tray. We have the stop bath here, and then we have first tray fixer and second tray fixer. And I'll discuss what each of those means. So I have my first and second tray fixers, so I'm going to put those into the correct position. I'm also going to move this out of the way. All right. These are typically in order, so this should be my stop bath, and it is. It goes here. And then developer goes here. It looks like the developer's starting to rub off a little bit. And I have some extra cylinders. It's not as clean in here as it should be. We're not following the rules of we leave it cleaner than we found it. And that's mostly because at the beginning of the semester and I've been what's been in here and I've been messing with stuff. So we'll work on that. All right, so we are going to need a cylinder. I'll use this cylinder. I'll put this one up. Because we need to put chemistry in each of these trays for processing. Now, just like when we were processing film, the only thing that you need to dilute is the deck tall. And it actually says deck tall stock, dilute 1 to 2. So it's not the same dilution as the film. It's actually less. We're going to use 1 part deck tall and only 2 parts water this time. And then we have our stop bath, which is at strength, and our fixers, which are also at strength. Now the difference between tray 1 and tray 2, really all we're doing here is we're trying to save the fixer. We talked about when we were processing film that mixing the chemistry dilutes the chemistry and exhausts the chemistry faster. So we have 2 trays of fixer because we are trying to actually save the life of the fixer. The second bottle of fixer is actually brand new fixer. Okay, I just processed this. The first bottle of fixer is actually old fixer. So what happens is that as fixer gets a little bit older, I cycle some of the older fixer into the first tray fixer bottle, and then put new fixer out for the second tray. And the last thing we're going to have is the water that we'll set up here as well. And there's kind of a couple tricks to setting this all up. I'll do that. But we'll go ahead and turn our tray over for that as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on the tempered water because I need to dilute my developer. Now this is not as sensitive as the film necessarily, but it is still important. So we're still going to check the temperature of our fixer, of our water for our developer, and really we just want to kind of be around somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 degrees. So as long as it's not too hot and it's not too cold, we're going to be just fine. Take a couple seconds here and wait while the water settles out its temperature, and it looks like I'm running just barely over 70 degrees. In fact, it's kind of cooling off a little bit, so we're probably okay. I'm all right with that. I'm going to call that 70 degrees. Okay, we'll turn off that water. Okay, now to dilute, so I'm going to basically put some of the developer into this cylinder with the water here. Now it's 1 part to 2 parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have I'm going to go with 20 ounces of water, and then I'll add 10 ounces of developer to it. And I've done that before, so I know that's enough chemistry to fill the tray enough for the paper to be completely submerged. I dumped a little bit too much, so I have to put a little more water in. And now about 20. So now I'll grab a deck towel. Okay, and it is supposed to look brown like that. That's pretty dark. It might be a little bit strong, but I'm just processing for demo purposes, so I'm actually only using old deck towel. I've actually mixed some new deck towel for you guys, but I'm gonna give this a shot and try to save some chemistry here. So I have that, and basically as I pour it in, that's gonna take care of mixing it. Okay, I'll go ahead and rinse. And call that good. All right, now, if you're concerned about it, you can actually just measure out 30 ounces of chemistry for each of these trays as well. But really, I just need to put enough chemistry in so that I can, submerge the paper. So, a little bit more than a fingernail depth. Now, so you can probably actually do that without measuring. Here's the stop bath. It's again same stop bath as before. It's indicator stop bath, and this stop bath I'm out. So, but I've mixed more chemistry. As I said before, I keep additional chemistry underneath the sink here. So I'm going to reach down, and I have some more stop bath. And that stop bath looks like that bottle might be deteriorating, and it's got some stuff in it. So I'm actually going to dump this. I'm just going to go fresh. I have some old bottles that I'm replacing, and so one of the reasons why I'm replacing them is because they're actually deteriorating, and we're getting plastic into the chemistry. So I'll probably check that and maybe throw this one away or replace it. Now, because it's empty now, I'm actually going to stick it over in the corner here where they put the rest of the empty bottles. So now I have a fresh bottle, and I'm just going to ensure it looks clean, so I'm not worried about it. I don't want any grain in there. The grain in there would have caused problems because if that ends up on your print, you'll have spots on your prints. Okay, so again, I'm just kind of pouring it out about, and I know I'm pretty good with the chemistry. I'm not worried about what it's going to do. So, I'll actually just stick my fingers in, and I tell you guys, do as I say, not as I do. So, if you do put your hand in the chemistry, make sure you rinse in between using different chemicals. So it's yellow, it's indicator stop bath. Yellow means good, purple means bad, so I'm good to go on that. Then I'll go ahead and do both trays of fixer. Looks pretty good. And then the new fixer. And then of course fixer, developer, we use it once and we dispose of it. Stop bath is indicator stop bath, we can tell by the color. Fixer, we check with hypo check. So I'm going to put a couple drops of hypo check in. 1, 2. Nice and clear, it's good. 1, 2, nice and clear, it's good. Always check the fixer before you before you use the chemistry. Now the tongs, are in varying state of use here, but you can actually put them back together no problem. So, but what I try to do is, if you look at the tongs, the tongs should say, they should, it's very light, but these tongs actually say developer on them. So I'm going to put these in front of the developer. This is so that we don't mix the chemistry. This set of tongs says stop on it. That's my stop bath tongs. I have, that's water. More stop bath. And then fixer 1. So I'm just basically setting them up so that I'm ready to go. And fixer 2. So I'll, set these aside. Okay, and now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up this contraption. Now this is a bit tricky, okay? One of the things we have to do with it is it doesn't sit quite right. Basically this is going to run the water for us in our little sink here, and it actually has a recycler so that it keeps the water clean. Okay, so I'm going to set this in, and then I'm going to use this sponge, wet the sponge, and then I'm going to wedge the sponge in behind. And what happens is that as the water gets high enough, it will actually cycle water out for us, so that the water in here for rinsing our prints is nice and clean. Okay, so that's the basic setup for our developer, or a paper sink. Okay, so I have my paper sink set up, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my enlarger set up. So I'm going to take the trash bag off the top. The trash bag is there to keep dust off of the enlargers. I'm going to ensure I have everything in this drawer down here that I'm going to need. So poly contrast filters we'll learn to use later in the semester. A negative tray, which goes into this portion of the enlarger when we need it. A grain focuser for when we're making prints. An easel for making prints. An easel for contact sheets. We also have anti-static brushes for cleaning negatives should we need them. And then some of you may even find devices like this, which you guys will learn how to use when we talk about dodging and burning. So, oddly enough, if there's anything else in there that's not supposed to be in there, please do go ahead and dispose of those things. And then put the things back in that you're not going to be using. I'm actually going to be using, first, the contact sheet easel. But I won't need the poly contrast filter, probably not even the grain focuser. And then also, before you turn the lights off, you're going to need to make sure that your enlarger is plugged in. The way this works is the enlarger plugs into a timer, and the timer plugs into the wall. Now the timer's on. Now it also has a power switch on the top, so if it's been turned off, you can turn it off that way. Now I want to go over how this is going to work. We control the light that comes out of this enlarger with the timer. Okay, there's a number of buttons here. Okay, I'm going to set this for half. But well, first let me show you what I'm doing here. Okay, these are how we set time. Okay, you can see here as I turn these knobs, the time changes. So I have full seconds on the left, and then fractions of a second on the right. Now I can also change that. I can change that from, it's set to tenths of a second, I can also change that to full seconds. So now if I have an exposure later on, that's a 45-second exposure. Okay? But fractions of a second are pretty good. Okay, I can also set how dim this light is. That's brighter. You guys can see that probably a little bit better. And I can also turn it off. I'll leave it on bright so that you guys can see it. Now I can also tell it if I want tone when the timer goes off. I can tell it that I want it to be, I want to have basically like it'll beat at intervals. Okay, if I did like multiple seconds. This is just a preference thing. I typically turn it off. Okay, and the last thing, it says outlet control. Now I want you to look over here and you can see right now it's set to time. But when I switch it to focus, notice that the light comes on here. Okay? Okay? When I'm focusing, when I don't have my paper here, which is light sensitive, I'll turn this light on to prepare myself. But then when I'm ready to make a print, I turn it to time, and then this button down here actually turns the light on the timer, and then when the time runs out, the light turns off. Okay, so that's the basics of how to set up the enlarger station. You'll also need, of course, your paper. And then I'll also show you guys, we're going to look at making contact prints. This is a contact print from our negatives. And I'm also going to show you how to make prints and then photograms. So you'll need materials for photograms, which is what I'll talk about next, how to make those prints. Okay, so let's talk about how to make photograms, what a photogram is. I have you guys make photograms because it's just a really simple way for you to get introduced into processing in the darkroom. It's a safe way. It gives us a chance to work with the paper before we actually even have negatives. All a photogram is, I'm going to leave my paper in here, but I'm going to set it here as if I were planning on using this. But a photogram is when we take objects, and you can use anything, and we use the objects as a way to kind of interact with the light before it hits the paper. And here I actually have an old camera lens that I actually had taken apart, oddly enough. And there's a number of pieces here. So a lens that didn't work, and just kind of pulled it apart so I could play with it. You can see the aperture ring on the inside. You can't actually manipulate it here. Let's see. Maybe I still can. Well, it's not important right now. There we go. And I have some lens elements in here as well. That's a lens element from the inside of the camera. And then here's yet another lens element, and you can see it's concave on one side and convex on the other. And I thought this might make a fun photogram today, just to kind of have something to play with. So a photogram is that basically I'm going to put these objects here on top of my paper when it's time, and then I'll expose it to light. And the light will pass through the objects and create a print. Now, when I make that first print, there's something we have to do so we know how much time the exposure will need to be for. The way the enlarger works is we actually have essentially shutter speed, the timer, and we have aperture. There's actually a lens in here, and if you look at my hand, you can see as I manipulate the aperture, more or less light comes through. Okay, so it's going to function very similarly to how our cameras do, in how we manipulate the aperture and the time to get the correct exposure. Now, there are actually devices that you can use to measure the light and potentially get you closer to the appropriate exposure in the enlarger, but what I'm going to teach you guys to do is what's called test strips. So what you're going to do is you're going to take some of your paper, you're going to cut it into strips. I actually have a couple of paper cutters here in the darkroom. I'll put one of the strips down, and then what I'm going to do is I'll pretend that this is my contact strip, or my test strip, excuse me. I'm going to put a piece of cardboard or something over the top so that part of it is showing, the rest of it's obscured. And I'm going to hit that with light for my 1 second. Here, I'm going to turn the timer on so you guys can hear. Okay? Then I'm going to move it just a little bit, about an inch maybe. I'm going to hit it again. Move it, hit it again, move it, hit it again, move it, hit it again, and then hit it one last time. And what that's going to do is it's going to create, on the test strip, you'll have a bunch of stripes. And the first area represents whatever time interval that you used. I have mine set up for 1 second right now, so that would be 1 second. The next square would be 2, the next 3, the next 4, the next 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to have 7 different distinct areas that will be lighter or darker. That's why it's called a test strip. I'm testing how much light I need to expose that particular image. So I will then pick. I'll say, okay, 3 seconds. And I'll then set my timer to 3 seconds, and then I'll put a full sheet of paper down underneath and then hit it for 3 seconds. Okay, so for the next little segment of video, I'm actually going to do this now with my photogram items. Okay, for this segment, admittedly, it's going to be very difficult for you to see what I'm doing here. But let me go ahead and just turn that to focus now. So hopefully you can see something. What I'm going to do is I have my paper. It's in this light-tight bag. I'm not going to expose it to light. That would damage the paper. I can also use a paper safe. And when I pull the paper out, I'll lay it underneath here. I'm going to use this easel as a way to tell, to make it easy for me to see where I'm at. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay my objects just kind of across to create my test strip. Okay? I'm in the middle of something. Can I?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Okay. All right. So this next part I need to do actually with no light on. So hopefully, you're going to be able to get as much of this, even though I'm going to have to go without the lights. Such is the life of an instructor who teaches online courses and is involved with the student media organization. You can never really get peace. Okay? Now, one of the things that's tough to tell is which side of the paper is photosensitive. And this is usually by feel. This is why I encourage people to actually get the glossy paper, because if you don't get the glossy paper, it can actually be tricky to tell which is the photosensitive side. A matte paper, the back of the paper feels a lot like the front of the paper. I'm using glossy. I've encouraged you guys to get glossy, and it's a little easier to tell which side is which. Okay, so I have my items set up. I have the timer, and now I'm going to hit it for a second at a time. And I'm just moving a little bit each time. And this is going to be a tricky one because I'm using three-dimensional objects for my photogram. You can use anything. You could use, a bunch. I've done leaves before. I've had students do pieces of crystal, and whatever it is that you'd like to do. So the next video, I'm going to try and show you what it looks like when we process. Okay, so now I'm processing the contact sheet. I have it in the developer. The little glow-in-the-dark strips that you see here actually tell you how long you want the each in the developer. And I'm just using the clock over on the wall. It's hard to see until your eyes adjust to determine how long it's supposed to be in here. This is 1 minute to 45 seconds. So, and I'm almost to 45 seconds. I actually had it in the chemistry before I started the video. And it darkened up nicely. And now I'm going to stick that into the stop bath. Now the glow-in-the-dark tape shouldn't actually provide enough light to ruin your paper, but I wouldn't take my paper and run it over the glow-in-the-dark tape. The stop bath is only 10 to 30 seconds, so it doesn't take very long at all. And I'll grab the tongs this time. I used my fingers the first time. And I'm going to drip in between. I want to try to preserve the chemistry. And now I'm into the first fixer tray. And the first fixer is for 1 minute, second fixer for another minute. So these are the longest ones and they're the most important. You know, the developer is, basically once it's, you feel like it's dark enough and it's evenly processed, you can go to the stop bath. The stop bath is just stopping the developing process, and really, 10 seconds is probably enough. I usually go longer because I like to make sure that I'm, erring on the side of caution. All right, but the fixer, if we don't fix the paper enough, the images will fade. They will be damaged as soon as we expose that paper to light, because the paper is, of course, light sensitive. I'm just kind of biding out time here. Okay, that is around about a minute. So I'm going to let that drip, drip, drip. And then into fixer number 2 for a minute. Put the tongs back on the edge of the cylinder. And I'm almost to the point where I can turn on the light. The paper will be safe. Now, I can tell by looking at this already that it is very dark for the most part. So chances are, when I do my my photogram, it is not going to need much time at all. And because I use three-dimensional objects, like I said in the last segment, a lot of the light is bending around and I'm not getting that very hard, fine line that I might expect that we'll see when we do some of the others. I'm going to do I'll do a test strip for my contact sheet, and I'll do a test strip for my print. Okay, and now I've just taken the paper out of the fixer and put it into the water bath to clean it off. Okay, and I'm going to go turn the lights on. My paper's put away, so I know it's safe. And I'm not going to worry too much about the water because it's actually, something that if I was going to keep the print, it would be more important. Okay, so it looks like I'm going to say somewhere in here. Now, this is obviously the area that is brightest. Darker means that it's been exposed the most, okay? So I'm going to guess that the print I want is probably just somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 or 3 seconds. That's what I'm going to go with, okay? So I can throw that test strip around, and now I'm going to make my photogram on a full sheet of paper. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and get myself ready to make that photogram. I'm going to go with 3 seconds, so my timer is set to 3. I'm going to get a full sheet of paper out of my sleeve of paper here. I'm going to put that into the easel. And then I'll arrange my objects in the middle of the paper there. I'm going to hit that timer. Okay, that was 3 seconds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to move the camera into position so hopefully you can see what it looks like this time when I put the paper into the developer. Okay. So here my paper goes now into the developer. I'm going to get it all in there, and then I'm going to agitate 45 seconds to a minute, and you can see it darken up very quickly. And essentially what's happening here is it's kind of a reverse image. The areas that were completely exposed to light have gone black, and the areas that the light was obscured have stayed white. And then there's some varying areas in between that we're going to see what that looks like as well here. Okay. Okay, so that looks like it's been about the amount of time. And now I'm in the stop bath. I'll zoom out and see if I can't show you guys the rest of this process. I'm counting my stop bath time. You can actually see a dark spot where my print is in the stop bath there. Hopefully this I can't really focus very well, so I don't know how well you guys can see what I'm doing right now. My apologies. That's probably been enough time. So drip, drip, drip into the fixer. Use the fixer tongs to push it down. And now for a minute, I got a little stop bath on my hands, so I'm going to go ahead and wash my hands. Always, always, always try to keep your hands as clean as possible in the process. Also, there's some paper towels here. Dry your hands off. Make sure that your hands are free of chemistry and they're not wet when you're at the workstation. All right, so there's not much to see now. Like I said, I'm going to do 1 minute in fixer tray 1, 1 minute in fixer tray 2, and then a 2-minute water wash, and then I'll show you guys what that print looks like. Okay, so I've got this is my photogram. This is a successful photogram. You can see here, this is what it looks like when I expose the paper to light through those different objects, those different elements. And there's some pretty interesting things going on here, some fun stuff. Some of the objects are completely opaque, others semi-transparent, others completely transparent. So you can see all kinds of different varying textures and things going on here. So that's the basic photogram process. And what I'll do is after this is through the water wash, I'm going to throw it on the drying racks, which are behind me right now. The next thing is to show you guys how to make a contact sheet.